Could it be? See, this is the thing with Al. It's the only way to recall names, members of Congress, cabinets, generals, sergeants, scientists, times, dates, places, ranks, occupations, all the way down the line. It would be years and years and years and years of intense study into all kinds of different areas. And where does one do that? And how do you pull that off? And where does this recall come from? So either it really happened to him, and these are life events for him, or they could have been implanted too as well. And he doesn't, he would perceive that both cases are equally as scary. There's no doubt about that. But his references to these mind control programs, did he ever make a comment to you on or off camera that he could possibly just be a victim of MK Ultra or some crazy CIA experiment?
Well, you're naming MK Ultra CIA. I can. You're bringing back a memory now. I remember many times we do interviews and he was tired. He would come in tired, and what he said was that while he's sleeping, they will basically do something that takes him or his soul or his person into another time zone, completes a task, and then he goes back. So imagine on a clock, 10 seconds has passed. But for him, it could have been 10 days. So in 10 seconds, he did 10 days worth of work. And he would every now and then say this happened to him. So I don't know what program that would be, but he did tell me that's the reason why he was tired.
And this was happening during your interview sessions?
Yes. Yeah. I just remembered it now.
Did he ever, okay, let me help you. This is my MK Ultra right here. That's what I'm doing. Did he ever mention what any of the missions were?
He may have. I apologize. I just don't remember it. I remember, I think when people tell you stuff like that, you discount it as false immediately. So I probably didn't pay close enough attention to it.
So what you're saying, I'm just trying to wrap my mind around this a little bit here. You're getting together. You're going to sit down for an interview session. He looks a little disheveled, a little tired, and you say to Al, "Hey, Al, you look a little tired today." "Well, yeah, I had to go out and save President Lincoln last night. They used me for another trip." Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Really?
I don't recall what he did, but I recall him saying every now and then they will go in, get him for, say, 10 days. So he had, but it was only 10 seconds had passed. But when he come back, he was completely exhausted. So I remember that happened a couple of times.
You've just blown my mind. And what do you do? I mean, see.
I didn't believe it.
Yeah, what do you do?
I didn't believe it.
I mean, it's Al Bielek.
How do you answer that? Yeah.
Right, it's Al Bielek. So you've got to think that there might be something to it. That's the crazy part. And for you, that's why I was asking earlier, Michael, and I'm not making light of this. I want you to go with me a little bit. At some point, you have to say to yourself when you're driving in your car, looking in your rear view mirror for the Men in Black, right? And you're doing that, you're either the world that you know it isn't real, right? That's it. Everything is a lie. Everything that you know, everything that you trust and honor just quite simply isn't real. And the world that we know it and the government that we know and everything that we know is completely false. There's no gray area here. And how did you feel? I know that you had those thoughts. You had to.
Well, you described what I was feeling better than I could have described it. And so how do you deal with that? You put them to the test. You have to come up with a test that will either prove or disprove him. And I came up with a test.
Talk to me.
Share that with you.
Yeah, talk to me.
Okay. All right. So while I was doing the interviews, there was a presidential election going on. It was between George Bush and the other guy.
Clinton.
You remember that?
Well, yeah, Clinton?
No, not Clinton. Al Gore.
Oh, Al Gore, right.
Yeah. So it was way back then. So this was 1999, 2000, something. No,
That's
2000.
Right.
So it's Bush versus Gore. Very close election. So, and I was interviewing it. This is on the CD somewhere.
Yeah, this was the Hanging Chad's election, right?
Hanging Chad's elections.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it was determined in Florida, and we'll go through the story. But so I'm thinking, this has got to be a bunch of BS that Al's saying. We can prove it. So I sat down there. The microphone was on. This was before the elections, and I looked at him and I said, Al, who's our next president? You've time traveled. You've been in the future. Who's our next president? Without thinking about it, without hesitating, without anything, he looked at me and I said, who's going to win the presidential election? That's what I said. And he looked at me and he said, no one.
Say what?
And that's what he said. He said, no one's going to win. And he says, but they're going to give it to George Bush.
Shut up. Says, Michael, slow down.
It's on the CD, I swear to God. He said they're going to give it to George Bush, and he went through a long spiel about how it was going. I think he said not the Supreme Court, because it was the Supreme Court that did it, but he said Congress was going to do it, and that he will be your next president. And that is what he said. And I'd say he got about 98% of it right.
Yeah,
and what's
man.
the chances at that point in time, this was maybe a month or two before the election, that he would get it right like that? I mean, he knew for sure it was going to be George Bush. He knew for sure nobody was going to win. He knew for sure it was going to go into government somehow, and they would decide. And he said they're going to give it to George Bush. Now, I thought at that time that this entire project was a complete waste of my time, because there is no way that that's going to happen. But I felt to be a pseudo journalist, and I think, you got to tell your own truth. So what I did was, in the office that I was in, there was maybe 40 people there, and they were all wondering what the heck I'm doing with this Al Bielek guy. I went out and told every one of them what Al Bielek told me. And they all laughed at me. And they all said, this is not going to happen. Well, I will tell you, after that election, there was panic throughout that office, because they knew I was talking to someone who said he was a time traveler, had visited aliens, and they all thought I was crazy. But I had also shared with them what he said about how the presidential election was going to go down. And they literally panicked, because they didn't know how to deal with that. Because he just said something which nobody would have believed to be a truth at the time, and he nailed it. And then, therefore, that means there's a reasonable chance that the rest of the stuff he's saying is true.
Wow. And when the election happens and Florida happens, did you have a holy crap sort of moment?
Yeah, it was beyond a holy crap. It was me and all my friends, everybody. We were totally convinced that this was going to be the thing that we could use to say Al Bielek is a liar. Because trust me, I honestly don't want any of this stuff to be true. Despite what people say about me, it's disturbing. So I felt I had him, but he had us on this. And then we had to really rethink and take a second look at everything that's on here.